This film contains graphic descriptions of Russian atrocities in Ukraine which some viewers may find disturbing. The subject of Ukrainian children in the war is one of the most harrowing issues of this war. From the beginning of the invasion, Russian soldiers have brought suffering to Ukrainian civilians, including children. Today we will be discussing children in the war crimes related to children, the Ukrainian school system, and also about the arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin issued by the International Criminal Court. Discussing these issues is OSW expert Jadwiga Rogoża.
Jeżeli operujemy tylko suchą statystyką,
Based on bare statistics, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine stated that 464 child deaths have been documented in Ukraine. Over 900 children have been injured, and it's believed that over 16,000 have been deported. This is, of course, the bare statistics, and I think that the data are far from complete. It shows that children are absolutely not excluded from this war. They've been suffering psychologically since the beginning of the war, and they will continue to suffer. Most often, the psychological strain is linked to having to leave their place of residence, moving to another region or to another country. This is also stressful for a child. Separation from friends and family, and going to shelters during rocket attacks and air raids.
According to a survey, 60% of children have witnessed war. 28% have been separated from friends and family. 24% have witnessed shelling and bombing. 17% have had a prolonged stay in a cold room. 6% have witnessed the death of a relative or loved one. And 5% have experienced hunger and a lack of water.
Mamy ogromny zalew, ogromną ilość historii dramatycznych, które przez ten rok się
A huge number of terrible stories have appeared in the public space in Ukraine over this year. They're being compiled by the Ukrainian prosecutor. I feel that all these reports are only the tip of the iceberg. Some of the most terrible incidents became symbols of crimes against children and also families, because these are often connected.
To jest na przykład przypadek
Like the case of a family from Mariupol. The mother was raped in front of her son for several days. She later died of the injuries sustained during these rapes. The child's hair went gray. I think this child will be struggling with the psychological impact of this for years, if not his whole life.
Psychologicznie będzie borykało się z tą traumą przez lata, jeżeli nie do końca życia. Innym dramatycznym przypadkiem, który znamy spośród wielu.
The case of a family from Brovary outside Kiev is yet another terrible example. Russian soldiers entered their home. They beat up the husband and then they made him kneel. They gang raped his wife and then his 4-year-old daughter in front of him.
Został postawiony na kolana. Na jego oczach zbiorowo gwałcono jego żonę, a potem 4-letnią córkę.
One of the most horrifying stories gained attention because President Zelensky spoke about it several times. This concerned the rape of a newborn. A Russian soldier recorded a video of him raping a baby and sent it to his friends in Russia.
Wideo, jak gwałci niemowlę, i wysyłał to do swoich znajomych w Rosji.
We see that Russian soldiers are not being held responsible for their actions by their superiors, by Russian society, or by their families. This means that it is not usually seen as something wrong, as criminal. The soldiers who raped the woman and her small child in Brovary, one of them was identified, and he's dead. But in Russia, he's been recognized as a hero. In his hometown, there's a plaque. He received a medal for bravery. So we can see that these actions can provoke this unpunished savagery, which Russians are applying against the civilian population in Ukraine, including against children.
Apart from the enormous crimes which affect children directly, there are also problems which concern their daily life, including their education. Research conducted in February this year shows that 1 in 5 children is studying less effectively. The education process in Ukraine has been seriously disrupted.
Tylko 26% uczniów regularnie uczy się stacjonarnie. Cała reszta uczy się albo online, albo
Only
hybrydowo.
26% of children study in school
Z
regularly.
badań też wynika,
The
że
remainder
większość
either
dzieci
study
korzysta
online or have
zarówno
hybrid learning.
codziennie,
The research
albo
also
tylko
shows that
godziny
1/3 of
codziennie.
children
To
miss
jest skala
lessons every day or a
dezorganizacji.
few
Te
times a
takie
week.
opuszczenia zajęć to też są
This shows the
te, o
scale of
których mówiliśmy
disorganization.
wcześniej, czyli albo
The missed
naloty,
lessons are
albo
caused by
brak
what we mentioned
prądu.
earlier,
To
air
też
raids
jest
or power
znamienne,
cuts.
że
The research also
w tych
showed that the
badaniach
majority
wychodzi,
of
że
Ukrainian
dzieci, które
children
się
study
uczą
online using their
online,
smartphones,
czyli tak
because not every
większość
family
swoich
has
dzieci
access to a computer.
korzystają ze smartfonów, bo nie w każdej rodzinie są komputery stacjonarne czy laptopy.
We can imagine what the
Więc
educational
zostaje tylko
consequences
smartfon,
of this
więc
kind of
możemy sobie
studying will be.
wyobrazić też, jak
This huge stress,
następstwa
the disruption of this
edukacyjne
process
będzie
and
miało
studying
takie
with a smartphone.
nauczanie właśnie. Ogromny stres, zakłócenia tego procesu i uczenie się z komórki. Oczywiście wobec niebezpieczeństwa fizycznego dla tych dzieci.
Of course,
tej
when
traumy
compared with the
ogromnej, to i
physical
tak jest
danger and the trauma of
duże
these children,
narzędzie.
this is of secondary
ale
importance.
ten rok
But in a
ma
sense,
też
this year
w
can be
pewnym
written off
sensie
in terms of
spisać na
education.
straty, jeżeli chodzi o edukację tych dzieci.
However, we
Chociaż
need to say
trzeba
that
powiedzieć,
Ukrainian
że
schools and the
ukraińskie
Ministry of
szkoły
Education
i
are doing what they
resort
can
edukacji
to give
robią,
things
co
a
mogą,
semblance of
żeby to
normality,
miało pozory
and
normalności.
schools are trying to stay
Rzeczywiście
open.
szkoły
Furthermore,
starają się
schools
działać
are shelters
stacjonarnie.
which provide
To
some
jest fakt,
safety
że
during air
szkoły,
raids.
są tymi
Very often,
schronami,
the so-called
które
invincibility
właśnie
centers were in schools.
dają,
These were places you could go
zapewnić
to spend some
bezpieczeństwo.
hours in warmth,
Bardzo często w
drink something
szkołach
hot,
były urządzane
use the
tak zwane
internet
punkty
or charge your phone.
niewolności, czyli te punkty
So
grzeczne,
generally,
gdzie można
schools
było
in these
przyjść,
traumatic
spędzić parę godzin
conditions,
w
just
cieple,
like families,
napić
tried to
się
maintain
ciepłego,
normality
skorzystać z
so that the
internetu,
children
załadować
felt a
komórkę
little
i tak dalej.
safer.
Russians created filtration camps on the occupied territories. Children also passed through them.
Pojawiały się doniesienia o obozach stworzonych dla dzieci, gdzie te dzieci również były
There have also
poddawane
appeared reports
torturom,
about camps
czy
created
takiemu
for children,
praniu mózgu,
where they were tortured and brainwashed by Russians.
przez stronę rosyjską.
Children are often separated from their
Dzieci
parents.
są często
There were many
odłączane
reports of
od
this in
rodzin.
Mariupol.
W przypadku Mariupola było
Children
szczególnie
whose
wiele
parents
takich
were still
doniesień,
alive
kiedy
were sent to
dzieci
Russia
żywych
and
rodziców
from
były
there
do
to
Rosji
remote regions
wywożone i
distant
potem
from Ukraine,
też gdzieś
and adoption
wywożone do
procedures were
dalekich regionów
undertaken.
oddalonych od Ukrainy i przechodziły proces adopcyjny. Więc tutaj widzimy, że
So we
to
see that this
ma
has a
charakter
systemic,
takiej
political
systemowej
nature.
polityki. To trochę
It's a little reminiscent of
przypomina
the
właśnie
Bolshevik
politykę
policy from the beginning of the
bolszewicką z
Soviet Union,
początków
when
Związku
children of
Radzieckiego,
people
kiedy
not considered
dzieci,
ideologically reliable were taken from their
osób
parents
uważano
and put
za,
into children's homes.
takie niepewne pod względem
They were raised
ideologicznym,
harshly and severely
były
brainwashed.
odbierane rodzicom, oddawane
They were
do
given
domu
a new
dziecka,
identity
przechodziły takie
and
ostre,
underwent rigorous
wychowanie,
procedures to create the new
ostre pranie
person.
mózgu,
So if the children
nadawano
remembered their
właściwie nową
parents,
tożsamość,
they were supposed to
były,
disown them
poddawane takim
and were meant to
rygorystycznym
be totally
procedurom,
loyal
które
to their
miały
new
z nich
homeland and
uczynić
family.
nowego człowieka, tak że te dzieci, o ile tych rodziców pamiętały, miały się ich wyrzec i miały być absolutnie oddane nowej ojczyźnie, nowej rodzinie. Więc to niestety
Unfortunately, the
stosunek
attitude
wobec dzieci
towards Ukrainian
ukraińskich, tak jak
children,
bardzo wiele
just as
innych
very many other Russian
zbrodni
war crimes
wojennych
in
Rosji na
Ukraine,
Ukrainie,
bring to mind infamous parallels
niestety
to the period
budzi
of the
w
October
pamięci
Revolution,
bardzo takie
Bolshevik
niechlubne
policy,
paralele
or
z
World War II crimes
okresem,
committed by Soviets,
rewolucji
including those in
październikowej,
Poland
polityki
and also in
bolszewickiej,
Ukraine.
czy zbrodni z okresu II wojny światowej.
The suffering of Ukrainian children was the basis for the arrest warrant which the International Criminal Court issued for Vladimir Putin.
To jest krok na razie oczywiście symboliczny, ale bezprecedensowy, dlatego że dotychczas
At
Putin
present, this is only symbolic,
był
but it is
oceniany
an
politycznie.
unprecedented
Jego
move.
odpowiedzialność była
Until
traktowana
now,
w
Putin has
kategoriach
only been
politycznych.
assessed politically,
Natomiast to po
and
raz
his
pierwszy,
responsibility was treated
mamy
politically.
do czynienia z
But for the
kategorią
first time,
prawną.
there's legal responsibility.
Został przez prokuratora
The ICC
MPK
prosecutors
uznany
have
za
recognized Putin
bezpośrednią
as being directly
odpowiedzialność za,
responsible for the crime of
zbrodnię
deporting people,
deportacji ludności,
in particular
w szczególności
children,
dzieci,
from Ukrainian territories or those occupied by
terenów
Russia.
ukraińskich bądź z terytoriów okupowanych przez Rosję. Drugą osobą, wobec której wydano taki nakaz aresztowania, jest rosyjska ombudsmenka
An
dziecięca.
arrest warrant has also been
Maria
issued for
Lvova-Belova.
Russia's children's commissioner,
Z jednej
Maria
strony,
Lvova-Belova.
jest
She has been
oskarżona o
accused of political
polityczną,
responsibility concerning the Russian policy
jeżeli
on
chodzi o
Ukrainian
rosyjską
children.
politykę wobec ukraińskich dzieci.
Belova personally
Belova
traveled to
sama
occupied
osobiście
territories
jeździła
many
wielokrotnie na
times.
tereny okupowane i można
It can be
powiedzieć, kierowała
said
tym
that she
procesem
managed the
deportacji
child
dzieci,
deportation
który
process.
oczywiście w Rosji jest nazywany
Of course, in
zupełnie
Russia, it's
inaczej,
called something completely
ratowanie
different,
dzieci.
rescuing children.
Ale też
But here, I think her
tutaj
personal
myślę, że
responsibility is
osobista
emphasized by the
odpowiedzialność
fact that she
podkreśla
adopted a
osobistą
teenage child from
odpowiedzialność
Mariupol,
przez fakt, że
whose father is reported to still be
adoptowała
alive.
dziecko z Mariupola, nastolatka, którego według doniesień ojciec żyje.
This
Ten
procedure
proceder
is somehow
jest
personified by the
w tym
person
sensie
officially responsible in
uosabiany przez
Russia.
osobę
Simplified legislation in Russia regarding obtaining Russian citizenship makes the process of Russian families adopting children easier. Fortunately, the International Criminal Court recognized this as a basis for filing charges and issuing an arrest warrant directly for President Putin and Commissioner Lvova-Belova.
In spite of Russian crimes, Ukrainian society has shown heroism and bravery and has taken action.
Dzieci wcale nie są wyjątkiem. Dzieci czasami muszą wspierać swoje własne rodziny.
Children certainly get involved. Sometimes they have to support their own families, for example, younger siblings, but also their parents. But there are also many examples of children being involved in the broader effort to support the armed forces in many different ways, by collecting packages for them or knitting socks, writing letters of admiration for soldiers, but also raising money.
Ale też zarabiania pieniędzy. Jest bardzo wiele przykładów przez ten rok.
There have been many examples of children earning money from odd jobs over this year. For example, cleaning cars at the intersection or singing. They would have a sign that the money is for the Ukrainian armed forces. There's even an example of a spontaneous band in Volhynia. A group of girls, friends who got together, for a year at weekends were singing at the town's central square and raising money for the army. And they raised 1 million hryvnia. So we can see that there are many such examples.
Więc to widzimy, że tych przykładów jest bardzo wiele.
Thank you for watching this video. For more OSW documentaries and interviews, please subscribe to our channel.